fiction reading and English majors. So my data set, in my data, I went around and I asked 30 first-year students how many novels they were required to read this semester, how many of those novels were fiction, and as well as how many textbooks they had and whether or not they intended to be an English major. And this interested me because I myself want to be an English major, and I know that fiction reading constitutes a large part of books that English majors read. So my population of interest was first-year students, because I also wanted to see whether that initial interest in being an English major shifted by the time that students graduate. So this shows that the relationship between the number of required books that students had to read and how many of those books were fiction, and it's right skewed. So most books are not fiction. There's a low amount of reading that first years had to do that were actually fiction. And then the scatter plot demonstrates the number of required books that each individual has to read on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis it shows the average number of pages total, fiction or not fiction, that each student had to read. And it seemed that most individuals had between 2 and 7 books to read in the semester, and most books were between 175 and 325 pages, although there are some outliers. So the parameter investigated was also whether the students intended to be English majors, and I asked this sample out of total students at Williams. So according to the most recent data set available on the Williams College website, out of 522 graduates in the class of 2015, 9.2% were English majors. So therefore I made my null hypothesis P equals 0.92 because I was interested, and this is a two-sided test. I was interested to see if first years had different aspirations of major than actually ended up occurring. So in terms of my assumptions and conditions, my data didn't meet the success-failure condition because I didn't have 10 successes and 10 failures. So out of 30 students I asked, 25 said no, and then 5 said yes. And then my sample is also, I didn't meet the 10% condition, or I did meet the 10% condition because my sample was very low, and then also I met the independence condition because the probability of a single case being an English major didn't influence whether or not another person was. I think I could have been more random in my asking of students though, because usually if I asked someone and then the roommate was there, I also asked them, but I think it was pretty random. So the p-value that I got from that test was 0.157, and that indicates that, assuming that my null hypothesis was true, only about 6% of students become English majors about 15% of the time. And that shows that based on my hypothesis test, more first years express interest in becoming English majors than actually end up graduating becoming English majors. And this shows that there's a shift from freshman to senior year that occurs in students that can't really be explained in my analysis, but shows that there's a higher level of interest than is actually carried out. And in the future, I would like to see the relationship between the amounts of novels that students had to read in the semester and the number of students who believe that they want to be English majors, because I feel like my sample was too small to make a generalization about all first-year college students. And I think a greater sample size would allow me to analyze the number of first-year students who want to major in English and then those who actually end up graduating with an English major. Thank you.
That was short.